Good afternoon, Overland Park. I'm Officer Harrison with Cop Talk. Welcome to our panel discussion on Black history. Before we get started today, we're going to have each participant introduce themselves so that everyone can get a better understanding of who is participating in this discussion. Let's get started.
Hello, I'm Byron Roberson, Police Chief for the Prairie Village Police Department. I've been in law enforcement for 27 years, 26 years at the city of Prairie Village. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, and I graduated high school from Grandview High School. My favorite quote is, "If not you, then who will step up?"
Hello, I'm Ray Teisinger. I'm a captain with the Overland Park Police Department. I currently work in the police personnel section. I've been in law enforcement for 34 years, and I grew up in Arkansas. And one of my favorite quotes is, "Put others before yourself."
How you doing, everybody? I'm Detective Juin with the Overland Park, Kansas Police Department. I've been with the Overland Park, Kansas Police Department for 4 years now. My current assignment is in the Office of Professional Standards. I'm going to share with you all my favorite quote in honor of Black History Month. It is from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and it's life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Dysart. I'm a retired division commander from the city of Overland Park. I was with the city for 25 years, 4 months, and 5 days. I taught high school after that. I was born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri, and my favorite quote is one by Booker T. Washington, and that is, "Success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles that one has overcome while trying to succeed."
Hi, my name is Ken Braden. I've been a police officer for 31 years here in Overland Park. Currently, I'm in the training unit at the police academy. And my favorite quote is, "Just win, baby."
How you doing? My name is Dion Coleman. I'm a patrol officer with Overland Park Police Department. I've been a patrol officer for about 1 year and 4 months. I'm originally from Riverdale, Georgia, and in relevance to Black History Month, my favorite quote is to be the change that you desire to see.
I'd like to start off with a very simple question. What does Black History Month mean to you? Let's start with you, Chief.
Well, that's a very interesting question. I actually had this conversation this morning with my former chief, Tim Schwarzkopf, and we were talking about a show that he watched recently on PBS, and it talked about what it was like after Reconstruction. And that whole word, Reconstruction, is such an interesting topic because after Reconstruction, there was a lot of progress made for blacks in all of the United States. But it was stagnated about 20 years later when they decided to pull back all of those rights and privileges that they had started to give. So where we are in 2021, that is what Black history is about for me. It is where we started 200 some odd years ago, being taken from a continent, taken to a whole different continent, in the bottom of slave ships, to being slaves for hundreds of years, to now, for me personally, as the chief of police of a predominantly white community. That is what Black history is about to me. It is about starting from nothing and becoming the greatest thing that you could become, just like everyone else in this great country that we have. It is the progress that we have made. It is all of the history that we have together as Americans. All of those things is what encompasses Black History Month. It's not just a month. It's about our entire being, our entire history. That is what Black History Month is to me.
Ken Dyson.
For me, Black History Month is an opportunity for reflection. I look at everything that's happened in the past, I look at everything where we are today, and I recognize the fact that it's important for us to have a history and for that history to be documented. Oftentimes we forget that if you don't document history, that it just disappears. For a number of years, the Native American population in this country was basically forgotten because they didn't document their history the way ours has been documented. So they're starting to catch up. So it's an opportunity for us to have relevance. And we become more relevant with each and every day that those things are documented and the things that we've done in the past don't get lost, and the things that we'll do in the future will not be lost. Even here in Johnson County and in Johnson County law enforcement, you will find that there are distortions in the history simply because no one has ever bothered to talk about them. When I walked in the room today, someone said I was the first African-American officer on this police department, and I was not. I was the third. There was a gentleman that worked here before me by the name of Willie Dixon, who worked here for about 3.5 to 4 years. He was actually the first African-American officer on this police department. There was another gentleman who was here for about 2 weeks to 4 weeks, I'm not sure, because they both came before me. But I started in 1976, and for the first 5 years that I was here, I was the only African-American police officer, not only on the city of Overland Park, but within the county, with the exception of the sheriff's department. And so things get lost if you don't pay attention. Things get changed, history gets distorted. And that's what African American History Month or Black History Month means to me, is to make sure that those things are properly documented and that we keep track of what really has taken place, not what we believe has taken place.
Absolutely, absolutely. What about you, Officer Juin?
Black History Month it's a very important month for me. To add on to what Captain Dysart had said, I think it is a moment for us to be able to rejoice and reflect upon those accomplishments, as well as thank those for their determination, their integrity, their resilience. When I think about Black History Month, I think about the foundation that was created for me. Where young men my age, the things that they had to experience back then where they didn't have that opportunity, and now I have an opportunity. And for me, it just tells me that I need to take advantage of the moment. I need to do the best that I can do. I need to continue to serve my community. I need to lead by example, of course, but go beyond that and be the best example. Continue to build that platform and be an inspiration. There were many other individuals prior to me that I aspire to be like, and I want to follow in those footsteps, and so that the younger generation, or even the law enforcement officers that are going to come after me, that I've kind of paved the way for them to be able to pursue their goals and accomplish their goals as well.
Love that answer. How about you, Officer Braden?
As I sit and I listen to all these distinguished gentlemen speak about what Black history means to them, I'm thinking as well, and several things crossed my mind. Part of it was being a Black male growing up in Tennessee and watching my parents and my grandparents work the way they did, the struggle that they had, the disrespect that they went through by people that were non-Black. I felt like as a Black man, I could do things a bit different if I became a police officer. Therefore, a lot of our history as Black people were erased years ago, and so we had to lay down that foundation for the new way that Black Americans will be looked at. And I just want to take a small step in that direction of having laid down that foundation. I try to mentor any person, especially a young Black man, but any person that will willing to listen and have an open heart and open mind. That's what Black history means to me.
I would like to get your perspective on this. We're all Black men, and we all understand the struggles that the Black community has had with law enforcement historically. Yet here we are, we're police officers. Why?
I'll tackle that one first. It's kind of funny, we spoke before cameras turned on, we talked about how the black community distrusts the police officers. And it's kind of odd because I heard some people say Kansas City, I heard some people say some other parts of the United States. Wherever you come from as a black person, there's been confrontation with police. So when you hear people say this is not the case everywhere, and maybe it is, why is it that the black community across the United States have issues of trust with police? Well, we can't solve that today, but what I know for a fact is that when I became a police officer, I wanted to do it better than what the people who came before me, if that makes sense. So I wanted to show people that, you know what, I am a man, regardless of what color you see me as. I am a man, so see me as a man, see me as a black man, see me as hopefully a leader in my community, and as a voice that needs to be heard.
What about you, Captain Tyson?
No, I kind of agree with Officer Braden. You know, when it comes to trust, I think the reason why there's a struggle in black communities nationwide is simply because how police were used at a certain time. I grew up in the South in the 60s, okay? It was very segregated then. And I remember as a little boy that there were certain neighborhoods and even certain restaurants that I couldn't go to living in the Deep South. And if I violated that, you know, the police got involved. If I was in a neighborhood at a certain time of day, the police got involved. So I never looked at the police as someone who was there to protect me. I looked at the police as someone who was always there to make sure I stayed in my lane. And when I say my lane, I'm talking about as a black kid, as a black person. I could only imagine that went on within a lot of communities throughout the South and probably throughout the United States. That citizens probably viewed the police as that tool that the majority of the communities out there use to keep the minorities in check. So, and if your parents felt that way, and if your grandparents felt that way, then you're gonna inherit that thinking. So I think that's why we face that nationwide, where people have that lack of trust in law enforcement. And again, I agree with Officer Brady. It's up to me, it's up to everyone sitting in this circle to teach, to educate, to win over members of our communities so they can share with their children, their grandchildren, that, hey, law enforcement is changing, it's becoming more diverse. There's more education involved, there's more community policing involved. And I think that when we do that, that ice will start to melt, shatter, and break.
Definitely. Chief?
Well, these guys are hard to follow because they make up some very good points. I, like Ray, I didn't grow up in the South, but I went to college in the South. I went to college in Mississippi. My parents are from Mississippi. So I spent a lot of time in that part of the country. I was raised here in Kansas City, Missouri. I was also raised in a family that taught me respect, no matter what color they are, and also discipline. And so that's kind of where I came from. So when I moved from Kansas City down to Mississippi, I saw a much different part of the world. I saw a much different type of policing. And the comment that I said earlier of the quote of, if not you, then who is it going to be, is very true. Because there's a lot of people in the black community that distrust police, and that's a fact. I've known that for many years. I have friends that feel that way, family that feel that way, and so for me, it's a personal thing. I want everyone to get the same treatment. I want everybody to be treated with respect. So, and I chose to be a police officer regardless of, all the stigma to it or what maybe friends and family thought about it. because I know that policing is an extremely important profession. It's an extremely important part of society. And for one reason or another, I chose it at a very early age. I remember my father taking me to a movie, and my father, like I said, grew up in the South. He did not trust police, for good reasons. And he took me to a movie, and it was a movie called Walking Tall. And it was a story about a sheriff named Buford Pusser from Tennessee, your home state, right? And that movie made a profound impression upon me of, justice, and regardless of obstacles in your way, justice will prevail. And for me, that is what drove me to be a police officer, regardless of what people thought about it. Even to this day, even right now, there's people that I know, people in my family that do not trust police, but they trust me. And so that opens up doors for me to have conversations with them to help them understand, what police are trying to do, what good police are trying to do. That all police aren't good, but this police is trying to be good. And I'm gonna make sure that everyone that is within my reach, my voice, my touch, my influence will be good. And that's the message that I try to send them, because that's my profession. It's a noble profession. It's a needed profession. And it's the one I chose.
Absolutely, absolutely. Officer Juin?
Well, I like right now, currently I'm in a graduate school program for criminal justice, and I've been immersing myself in just the history of policing and law enforcement in light of a lot of different things that obviously have occurred, especially throughout this past summer. And I've noticed a trend that, when we see these issues, these large community issues, it tends to start from bad community relations between the police and the minority community. And I think, the things that I've noticed are, the lack of trust, or some people feel that they've been disrespected. My family spent a lot of time in New York City. After my family immigrated from Haiti, they moved to New York City. So my mother moved to New York City in 1977. And, they always talk about the stories, the NYPD stories throughout the 80s and the 90s. And I kind of got a sense of there was a strong distrust. And I think that, as a profession, there's still room for us to grow. We do need to build that trust back. We need to continue to do those things that's gonna earn the respect of our community members and the people that we serve, and so that they can understand and feel like we're policing in a fair and impartial way. One of the things that I always try to give to younger officers, those officers that are that want to apply, or that are in the first or second year of their careers, I always tell them that it's important that you acknowledge someone else's concerns. You make those concerns a priority. People they'll forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And so that's why I always encourage officers that, irregardless of the situation, I think it's your goal to ensure that when you leave the contact with anybody, with any person, that you need to make sure that person feels validated. And I think that's one of the areas that, with the history of policing, is that a lot of the minority communities, the Black communities, they haven't felt validated. And so I think there's room for improvement. I think we've been heading in that direction. And that's the reason why I'm in the position that I'm in now. I do believe that I can make an impact, I can affect change, and I want to be able to grow my influence and let all members of the community, minority community, know that they are validated and that those concerns that they have, they don't fall on deaf ears.
Absolutely. Captain Dysart.
You know, for me, becoming a police officer was very personal. And my dad became a campus security policeman for the Metropolitan Community College District in the late 1960s, early 1970s. And he became a campus police officer because he couldn't be a regular police officer. He was much too old by that time. But I had a brother, half-brother, who was a murder victim, 1968, Kansas City, Missouri. And my family really never felt as though the police or the prosecution gave it the attention that they should have. No one was ever prosecuted, even though there was a suspect. And so I think my dad wanted to try and find out the mindset of police officers. And so he set the example, and in 1972, my sister became the first female police officer in the Kansas City Police Department to ever go through the academy with the men and be placed on the road. She was the first one in the metro area to be placed on the road with men, having graduated from the academy. There were 3 women in her class. She was the only one to graduate. She grew up with 3 brothers, so she was a little bit different. I think Captain Teisinger actually knew her early in his career when he worked at Kansas City, Missouri. So she took up that mantle as well. And then I had already made up my mind I was going to be a police officer. And I understood, the importance of the job. I didn't understand at the time how much work it actually entailed in terms of the relationships that you have to have with people. And over the years, I've tried to develop those relationships and make sure that those relationships have gone a long way. I did that when I was with Overland Park, and I continue to try and do that even outside of law enforcement to make sure that people understand the work that all of you are trying to do, because it is extremely important. As for trust, I think those of us that are people of color are inherently distrustful oftentimes of people outside of our own bubble, especially outside of our own families. And so I can see and feel the public's concern when it comes to trusting members of law enforcement, because we are well outside of their bubble. And certainly, if we think about it, we realize how distrustful sometimes we can be of one another. And so to build those relationships through, I think Ray mentioned community policing, to build those relationships through that one contact, whether it be a traffic stop, whether it be a call that you make for service, you have the opportunity to build a relationship with people who will then talk to others and explain to them how much you did for them at that time. And that's really our end, is every contact, each and every contact that you have with the public. Sometimes it works out well, sometimes it doesn't. But the reality is that the job still has to be done, and as we do it on a daily basis, we have to not only represent the law enforcement community, but we actually have to represent the Black community as well. Whether we work in Johnson County, whether we work in Wyandotte County, Jackson County, Missouri, etc., we still represent this job, and we represent the Black community as well, because when people look at you and you're in that uniform, they don't just see a police officer, they see a Black police officer.
For the group, is it important to you gentlemen that the community you serve see you as a police officer or Black police officer, and that the community that you're from, is it important to you that they see you also as a Black police officer?
I'll start it off. For me, I want people to see me as a police officer, someone who's qualified, someone who has those core ingredients to get the job done. Once they see, he's willing, he's able, he's capable to do the job, then they want to look at me at that next level. Okay, he's a man, he's a police officer, but he's also a black man, okay? So we're looking at a black man who's educated, we're looking at a black man who's capable, has the character and everything that we want in a police officer in our community. I think that carries over to other young men that look like me, that that come from where I come from. But they can see that Ray Teisinger can overcome that stereotype and win over a predominantly white community like Overland Park. That they feel not just comfortable in his personality, but his skills, his education, his ability to do the job. That they see that, and then I win them over as an employee who meets those standards. Then that community believes in me. Then I think that opens up doors for other young men to say, you know what, they treat Ray okay over there, I think I want to be a police officer, not just in my community, but in other communities. And I think that's where we, as black law enforcement officers, have to remember that it's not just the brothers that's looking at us, it's communities nationwide that are looking at us. And we got to show that we're capable. We got to show that we got the education, we got the skills, we can do the job, that we can lead. So that that majority, that chief or that deputy chief can say, you know what, not only am I getting someone with good character, not only am I getting someone who's educated, but someone who can represent their community. And I think that opens things up, That's how I look at it.
I think Ray pretty much summed it up very well. We all want the community to see us first as a police officer, regardless of our race. It does come into play when we're talking about trust of the community, though, because when they look at someone who looks like them, who is policing their community with respect and professionalism, they will start to think that, maybe this is a profession for me. It's just like being, why President Obama's election was so important. It wasn't just because we never had a black president. It was giving hope to a generation of people who had never seen that. And so they now have an opportunity to say, I can achieve anything. And that's what, being a police officer, especially for the black community, and even more especially for the younger youths, that they can see that, this is a good profession, this is a fair profession, and I can do it because I just saw, all these guys here that look just like me, that are successful at what they do.
It's a big reason why I became a school resource officer. And so that I can be an influence on the younger generation, and they can see, okay, everything that I see on TV isn't the way it is. I have this police officer right here in front of me. He's a good guy. Yes. He helps me with everything. He talks to me about my problems. He's in my class. He's presenting. He's teaching me things. He's out here coaching me in baseball and football and track. We do these things. What you see on TV isn't a representation of what we do. Okay, it's not what law enforcement is all about. It may happen on occasion, but that's not the way that it is. And I feel like it's my duty to model for them, to show them that this is what it's about. Not what you see over there, but what I'm doing right here. This is what it's about.
And it's ironic that you even said that, because I've always been a type of person that watches and that, tries to soak up from other people. It's just, it's an honor to be in this room with all of this experience and all this wisdom, because there's so much to learn. And you saying that you were a school resource, that's why you're a school resource officer. It encouraged me, my school resource officer encouraged me, and he wasn't even black. Just being who he was and being a man of integrity, a man of character, standing up for what was right, telling you the straight truth, no chaser. Things like that go a long way, especially for somebody who was young and didn't have an identity. Because a lot of kids, a lot of youth nowadays are searching for what it is that they desire to do. And I know I've always been taught that more is caught than taught. Seeing people do actions speak more than actually, what they say. And in relevance to your question, For me personally, I lived the majority of my life south of Atlanta. So a lot of the people in my community where I came from had a huge distrust for police, even siblings. So in order to be in this profession, I kind of viewed that you kind of have to have the mentality to go against the grain. You kind of have to be that road warrior, you know what I mean? You kind of have to be that guy that's like, no, I'm gonna do this route. And obviously it's for the better, it's for progression. So I'm thankful, I really am, I'm thankful every day. I'm blessed and fortunate to be able to do, to have an opportunity to be in this profession because I have friends who know what I do and who can say, okay, at least I know one, because that's all it takes is one.
Right.
All you need is that one person who can say, okay, I know at least one good guy, one good cop. If you have that preconceived mindset of all police are bad, which a lot of people in our community do, or they don't have that trust, being that one person can make all the difference for one person.
Absolutely. And I frequently get phone calls from my friends in Memphis asking me questions about whenever there's a white police officer that kills a black person, I get that phone call said, hey man, I know you're a police officer, we trust you, explain this one. Make me understand this one. And then I go and say, hey, we don't have the whole truth. As a police officer, it's one thing we do learn. We don't make judgment without part of the information, and that's what I try to educate them as well. We only know what we see right now, and it looks bad sometimes. Well, let's hear the whole truth before we make a decision on it, right? That's as police officers, that's what we are trained to do. And so I try to educate my friends about that part of it, saying that let's hear all of the stuff before we make a decision on it. Because it's easy to make a spur-of-the-moment decision about something just based on a 10-second video. But let's hear all of it. And I said, you know what? There's certain things that we have to understand before we make a decision on these type of situations. Let's hear all of them before we do that. And believe it or not, I got some friends that say, man, I hear you on that. And I'm willing to abide by that rule now. And so that's to me is, again, because of the position that I am, the experience that I've had in this business, this law enforcement business, the brothers and sisters that I've met, it's afforded me the opportunity to share this wisdom with these other people. And I'm grateful for that every time.
Changing the mindset
That's right.
is very, very important.
One person at a time.
Absolutely. You have to change the mindset. Can't let everybody go into the situations thinking that everything is the same, okay? Look at every situation differently on its own. If you sit there and you try and put everything into one box and say, no, it's all like that and that's how it is, well, no, that's not right. That's not how it goes. And so what you did, and what I try to do as well when people ask me about it, I'm trying to change your mindset. Look at it this way. Giving them an opportunity to figure this out, investigate it, explain, figure out what's going on. That's how it has to go. You can't go into the situation and just think it's all the same. Can't do that. What do you think, Officer?
Man, I think a lot has been spoken. But just to add on to what they say, I do want to be viewed as a police officer. And, as a father to a young 10-year-old, it's important for me to be that inspiration, especially for those where they don't see, police officers like me in their community often. I want them to know that it's possible. You can be successful. You can do what you want to do. That law enforcement is a noble career. That you work hard. You do everything, with compassion. You show respect, integrity, and honesty. That you'll be successful at whatever endeavor that you pursue. If you just live by those rules, that you'll be all right. But I'm happy. I will say that I'm very proud when people know that I'm a police officer, because I think it does build trust. And as many of the individuals said before, just gaining that one person's perspective is good.
I've heard several of you say it's important to be recognized as a police officer. You want them to see you as that first. And I have a little bit of a disagreement with that, because you should want to be seen as a human being first, I think. if they can see you as a human being before they see you as a police officer, before they see you as a black man, then they can see you as an equal. If they don't see you as what you do, which is being a police officer, if they don't see you as a human being first, then it's hard to overcome the obstacles that we are trying to overcome as police officers. You know, often times when you make that contact, it's that human contact, that human touch that will draw you closer to that person. They can see that you are a police officer because you're dressed in a uniform most of the time. They can also see that you are a black man. Okay? That's obvious. But can they see you as a human being? And I think that that's the outreach that everybody in this profession should be reaching for. When I was teaching high school, I've been gone from the police department. This will be my 20th year this year since I retired. And I taught high school for 12 years in Kansas City, Kansas, in inner city schools. And my students knew that I had been a police officer. And oftentimes they would want to chat me up as a police officer. And I would always try to remind them, I'm more than willing to converse with you on those issues. But before you do that, I want you to see me just as another person. Right. Don't see me as a cop. Don't see me as Mr. Dysart, the teacher. See me as another person. Because if they can see you as a person first, then you can overcome so many obstacles. But that's the most difficult one. And that's the one that I think that black people have been chasing and people of color have been chasing our entire existence. Because when you look at us, it's obvious. You know, the color of our skin is obvious. Okay? What's in here is not. And I still remember one day I was driving the chief, former chief, to court. One of my officers had been involved in a shooting, and the chief was talking about career development. At the time, I was a division commander, which at that time with Overland Park was a captain, is now a major. And he was talking about career development, and I said, Chief, you know, I'm gonna be retiring in a couple of years, and so don't spend a lot of money on further development for me because that's better suited for someone else at this time. And he said to me, what else could you do? And not to be critical of him, but at that moment, he solidified for me the fact that I was definitely going to retire and I was going to go teach school. Because being a police officer is what I did. It is not who I am. Right. And that's what I told him at that moment. I said, Chief, this is what I do. This is not who I am. Because that's the only thing he could see himself as, was a police officer. He didn't see me as anything else. And that's unfortunate. Because we have to strive for that. We have to push for that first, that recognition. I'm a human being first. Then I became a police officer. But there's many other things that I was. I was a son. I was a brother. I was a member of my church. You know, I was an uncle. I've been a coach. So many groups that we identify with as people. But the key one, the first one that you have to reach, I think, for all of us, is you're a human being first. And we want to extend that courtesy to the public, and we want the public to extend that courtesy back to us.
Absolutely.
Very well said.
There's so many things that we've done in our history. We have so many influential people, so many people in our history that have done great things. For me, you know, I look back at certain people during the civil rights movement, you know, that influenced me. You know, I'm a huge fan of Willie Mays and Jackie Robinson. I love baseball, you know, that's my thing. Who in Black history has influenced you?
You know, Josie Bondon, and she's not a name that's going to pop off the screen at anybody. You guys probably look at me and go, who is that? Well, that was my mother. The hardest working woman that I've ever been around. She raised 5 kids by herself, and there wasn't a day that I didn't have food on the table. Okay? There wasn't a day that I didn't have clean clothes. Now, we're not talking about the type of food, the type of clothes, but they were clean, you know, and the food was edible. So I was able to eat every single day. She taught us respect. Not only did we respect each other, brothers and sisters, but outside the house. we respect the church, we respect the community, we respect the world. She taught me so much about life in general that when I actually got into the real world, the first thing I came back to my mind was what my mom had said to me. And I said, Mom, I should have said my mama had said to me, okay? Because she taught me about what the world was about. So I give that woman, again, Martin Luther King, all these people historically that the entire world know about, I give them great respect, but for me, it started with right there at my house at my mom's.
Love that answer.
I'm gonna apologize to moms right now.
Listen, right.
But for me, I don't idolize a lot of people. I do respect a lot of people's contribution to mankind. And one person I truly respect because later in life got into history and got into reading, and for me it's Audible. I love Audible books. And I listened to one here not too long ago, and a person that I think was truly remarkable was Booker T. Washington, because his important thing was you have to educate yourself, you have to educate your mind. And for a person like him who had no education, taught himself how to read, taught himself how to write and be an orator that was like no other, at a time when they looked at him as a person, there's no way he could do this. And that's why it was such a tremendous feat for someone like that to start a college, start many colleges as a matter of fact, and was able to raise money and start these, institutions of learning. And so for me, a person like Booker T. Washington was someone who had nothing, had no education, had no way in order to make it to that other side, from his sheer fortitude, determination, and belief that he had to do it because no one else would, and then bring everyone else with him, I think was just an incredible story for me.
Absolutely. What about you, Officer Coleman?
I'm kind of with the chief that I really don't try and set myself to like idolizing people, because there's so many people, and one reason is mainly because there's so many people who have just truly imparted so much in my life. In relevance to Black History Month, and obviously my mother, and I apologize, Mom, because KB already took it. My mother was huge, a huge portion of my life. I would definitely go with the younger generation route, and say LeBron James. And obviously he's an icon in sports and things like that, but I feel like his off the court contributions are overlooked. Starting a school for impoverished kids in the inner city Cleveland area. I went to school up in Northeast Ohio, and it's a very different dynamic. I just say it like that. But his off the court philanthropic actions are second to none. And just kind of what he's done in the NBA, coming from high school, and just being really an admirable player to take the criticism and to be bashed for this, for going this place and going that place, and just living up to his potential and exceeding it consistently every year. Not being a problem in the media, things like that being, there are a bunch of stereotypical statements that are given to a lot of Black athletes, and a lot of it is due to past actions of past athletes. But it's a rarity that you hear him in media with any kind of backlash and slander, unless it's just by critics. So I think it's honorable that a man of his, fame has kind of held a standard and been consistent with his standard and been consistent with his, play on the court and his his abilities off the court and what he's done off the court is amazing too.
That's a good point.
Yes, it is. Definitely. What about you, Captain Tyson?
You know, for me, I think about the contribution out there from so many men and women throughout the years. You know, I think about those people that have done it nationally. I think about those people here locally that have done a great job, you know, for our community. But for me, growing up in the South, I think what really motivated me and been an inspiration to me is just the male role models that I had. And, you know, I was lucky, you know. I think that what really hurts our community today is not just the struggle as a Black community, but I think leadership within our community. And I was lucky, you know, I had my grandfather, I had my father, and my godfather, and other men in my life that taught me the do's and don'ts growing up as a young man. And I think that I'm sitting here today because of that teaching and that molding that I got from those men. So when I think about those who gave contribution to the Black community, of course, Dr. King done a lot, and a lot of other citizens out there have done a lot. You know, I think about Alvin Brooks here locally, you know. But for me, it started in my home, you know. Those men, you know, kept me focused, kept me out of trouble, where I was able to have a work history that gave me an opportunity to be here. I know a lot of my friends that would make good police officers, but their work history, the issues that they dealt with before they became adults are stopping them today to be able to work in certain jobs, to be a federal agent or a police officer. So I just thank those men in my life for teaching me to walk down that path of righteousness and having that opportunity to do things that a work history would stop me from doing. You know, so that's where I'm at.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think, you know, there's so many inspirations that I can talk about, and I mean, inspirations right now that I'm sitting next to. You know, I think all of these men, you know, they inspire me. You know, just looking at the amount of law enforcement experience that I'm sitting in front of. You know, I think it's awesome. And it tells me that, you know, that I really and truly can accomplish great things. You know, when I walk down the hallway down at the Sanders Justice Station and I see the captain's photo, and now to be able to actually sit in the room with him is actually, it's an honor. And I want to say thank you for, you know, blazing that trail for me. You know, Officer Braden, you know, Captain Teisinger, the chief. You know, I've read news articles about the chief before, so you know, a lot of inspirations for me. But I would say similar to the captain and Officer Braden. For me, it was within my home. It was my grandfather. And the reason why I say that is because I kind of have a different background. You know, my family immigrated to the United States from Haiti, you know, the first independent Black country, you know, in the world. And so, you know, as a young child, you know, my grandfather would always say, and this is America, you can do whatever it is that you want. You know, to know that he immigrated from Haiti, you know, didn't know how to speak English, with no formal education, you know, but he was able to still, you know, work hard, you know, do things, you know, honest and with integrity, with determination, and to be able to provide for a family in New York City for over 3 decades. To me, that's just the greatest inspiration that I could ever have. You know, and it is my dream that I'm able to pass that on, especially to my 10-year-old son. You know, I hope that I can be just half the man that my grandfather was to his 7 children. you know, that I can be the inspiration, you know, to let my son know that, you know, hey, you can do it, you know, you get your education and you put your mind to it, and it's attainable.
Who's influenced you, Captain Dysart?
There are too many to, you know, I'll go back, you know, my grandfather, both my grandfathers were born in the 1880s. So as you can imagine, their parents were slaves. And I had the honor of actually knowing one of my great-grandparents. But the examples that have been set for me throughout my life, those folks, my parents, you know, they worked, you know, very, very hard. You mentioned your mom. You know, my mom had the support of my dad, but my mom put in 14-hour days. I watched her put in 14-hour days in the beauty shop that she ran herself. I watched my dad work 3 jobs so that I could get an education. Among my siblings, I was the only one who didn't go to public school. They sent me to parochial school. I was the youngest. So they, you know, they made up their mind. Even back in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, Kansas City, Missouri public schools were struggling. And that's where my brothers and my sisters were going to school. And so my parents made up their mind that they were going to have at least one child that they felt got a quality education. And so, you know, they worked so hard. You know, and then there are people, historical known individuals like Booker T. Washington, like W.E.B. Du Bois, like Bayard Rustin, who was kind of a big influence on Dr. King that a lot of people don't know about. Dr. King himself. Carter Woodson in 1926 made the second week of February known as Negro History Week. You know, he was the one that was the precursor, if you will, to where we are today with this month. You know, so there are so many people who have influenced me, and I feel blessed and I feel fortunate that those individuals did those things for me. One of the people who influenced me the most, even as a black person who wasn't black, was a teacher that I had in elementary school. And he once, talking to some other people, told them, because there weren't very many black kids at the school where I was going, he told them that he believed that I could do anything that I wanted to do as long as I put my mind to it, talking about me to them. And that had a huge impact on me. You know, so there are so many people that have an influence, and the rest of us. I mean, if you think about it, how many people have influenced you? You know, you could come up with scores and scores of influences. And again, I just feel blessed and honored to have the opportunity to fulfill some of those things that they believed in with regard to me as a person.
We love that answer. It's a great answer. It was really good. There's so much wisdom in this room. So many great answers, so many great comments today. But we're going to put a bow on this conversation with this topic right here. My pastor, Adam Hamilton, is always talking about being the light to the world. And so my way of being the light is giving back. I give back as much as I can. I give my time coaching, doing all kinds of things just to give back so that I can say, okay, yeah, you know what? That's what I did. I'm giving back, and I can look back on my life and say, you know what? I'm proud of it. I did that. What are all of you doing to be the light?
Well, I guess I haven't took the lead, so I'll just hop in there. You know, that actually is a question that was asked of me not too long ago, is what am I doing to enhance my race? Well, I think just being me is enhancing my race. Not only would I give my life for any one of you, I would give it for any one of those guys and any one of the people that are in my community, and I don't know them. That is something that it's always been here for me, not the badge, but behind the badge. My heart will give my life so that someone else can live. And that is a unselfish thing. That is a thing that is I think that at the heart of any police officer who really wants to do good. And I truly believe that we all are here in this room because we feel that way. And I think that's, in a short answer, that's what I am willing to do. I am willing to lead. I'm willing to be out front. I'm willing to take ridicule. I'm willing to take rocks being thrown, whatever it takes, because I know that what I'm doing is a noble profession, regardless of my race, and I'm willing to stand up for it.
Absolutely. Well, bless you, Officer Braden.
I'm currently I'm an instructor at the police academy, and when I speak to the cadets, I call them my kids. So I call them kids, my kids. I truly believe that this is a noble job. As a kid, I respected the police utmost. Didn't know a lot about them. They treated some of my family pretty bad, but it was just one of those positions that you just respect the police. Your parents, regardless, always told you, respect the police. So when I talk to them about being a police officer, one of the things I say is that when you step out of that car and you're in front of someone, you're in front of the public, you put on your best face. You may have a hard time at home in your personal life, but as soon as you step out of that car, you're in front of the public, you put on your best face because everyone is watching you. You drive down the street, every eye is on your police car. So you have to be that role model that you may not ask for, but it's what is expected of you because it's this type of job. It's a noble job. It's one of the most respected jobs there. So when I speak to the cadets, I talk about being that role model. And that's important to me, the job.
Officer Joe? And that's a deep question, and what are you doing to be that light, and it brings me back to, my favorite quote, my Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which is, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And I think about that every day, and that's why, I constantly challenge myself to, get as much education as I can, and I try to give that information back to those around me, so that, I'm encouraging members of our community, even if it's the Black community, to, educate yourselves, develop that strong family support system, because I know how important it is for you to have a strong family support system. That's one of the biggest stepping stones that any human being can have, which allows them to be able to advance. And just make sure that, I do everything with just being honest, and like I said, lead from the front, lead by example, but go beyond that and be the best example.
Definitely. Captain Teisinger?
Before I give my answer, what I'd like to say to whoever's gonna have an opportunity to watch this video is pay attention to the theme. And that theme is that every man sitting around the circle prepared themselves for that opportunity. The city of Overland Park didn't just give Captain Dysart the opportunity to be a division commander. He earned that, and he prepared himself for that. Prairie Village just didn't look at him one day and say, we just want to give you this position of chief. He put himself in a position where he proved to the council, the previous chief, and every other member within the city of Prairie Village that he's capable of doing that job, and he prepared himself for it. Being at the police academy, I've been in law enforcement for over 30 years, and some of the most people that bring the most education to my life as an officer was at the police academy. So to see this young man at the police academy and teaching and leading and guiding, he prepared himself for that opportunity. So I just like to say that whoever's watching this video, just take it in that the men sitting around this table were prepared for those opportunities. No one just gave us anything. We had to earn it. You know, we had to fight through a lot of stereotypes, a lot of friction and static to get where we was at. It just wasn't given to us. And the same with these young men that are up and coming in law enforcement. Now, to answer your question about as far as the life, I'm big on saying that it starts at home. It starts with that foundation. And I have 4 boys. And the first thing I wanted to do is make sure that my boys were a positive light in our community. Not just the black community, but our community in general. Because I feel that the more people that see that black men can be, like the captain said earlier, can be human, can be educated, can function in society, that we can fight the stereotypes. We not like what you see on TV. We can work in your banks. We can run your banks. You know, we have our black-owned businesses. When they pay attention to that, then that's when I really think that there's going to be more diversity within the United States and all across the world. But it has to start somewhere, and I think it starts in a home. And for me, my life started with my boys. You know, I taught them to be men, and I hope that they start with their boys or their daughters, and it just branches out. That's how I view it, and that's how I shine my light. I think it starts into the home, and it branches out.
That's so important. So important. Officer Coleman?
Shining my light, what it means to me is 2 words, and that's consistency and effort. My entire life I've been taught that those 2 things you can't teach. Those are 2 things, consistency and effort, that you have to work with. You have to work toward, you have to develop. And kind of what Captain Teisinger was speaking on before he gave his answer, everyone in this room distributed a great level of consistency and effort in their walk, in their profession.
Yes.
To a degree that some might say was to a fault, you know. But for me personally, as far as being that light, I need to show consistency and effort at home with my wife. She needs to see that in me, so she can know that she can trust me, she can follow me, and she can believe in where I'm leading her. And when I'm out, you know, patrolling, the first contacts with people are so important. Developing that personal touch, you know, being able to have a genuine conversation with a person means the world to me personally, especially when I'm having the officer presence that you talk about in the academy. When people see you, they see an officer. But when the conversation rolls and you're laughing at the end, it's kind of like, wow, we just broke barriers right there.
It's the best feeling, isn't it?
It's the greatest feeling. Breaking that barrier of, hey, technically I can stop whatever you're doing and just halt your rights right there if I have, you know, probable cause or reasonable suspicion of something. Well, the fact that we can just sit here and have a conversation and we can laugh and we can, you know, be jovial with one another, that means the world to me. That screams effort and consistency. And it was from everybody. You know, I think I was just talking with a coworker last night when we were at work, and he was just saying, you know, it's funny. Could you believe that we're police officers right now? Like, the fact that this is real, and it's an honor. You know, Officer Braden's consistency and effort in the academy taught us, you know, the skills that we needed and the skills that higher ups like Captain Teisinger saw fit to say, yeah, we believe that you can do this job. You know, we trust that you will live the values, that you'll represent our community and our department well. Man, Chief, you're an inspiration. Captain, you're an inspiration. It's you guys just scream consistency and effort. And me personally, I do a disservice to those who came before me if I don't, or if I don't put forth that. So that's what being the light screams out to me.
That's a very good answer. It really is. It really is.
Brother got it, man.
Sir, preach.
Captain Dysart.
You know, the last week that my father was alive, his mind was still sound, but his body had given out on him. He told me that he thought it would be a good thing for me to retire from the police department and teach school. I made him that promise, which is why I went to do that. And so for 12 years, I taught high school and I coached. And I taught American history, American government, and economics. And the students whose lives I touched during that time, the students who I coached during that time as a high school coach, that's my defining light. Because aside from my own family, aside from my own children and my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, who I love dearly and I think that they'll all be great, the children whose lives I touched in the inner city are that defining light for me. Some of those kids still call me, and I've been out of the classroom now 7 years this year, and I still hear from them. I know what they're doing. They have families of their own. They understand the lessons that I was trying to teach them. And so I hope that those students, because some of them have gone into law enforcement as well, I hope that those students will follow that legacy and will touch other people. And that's my defining light, because it becomes a chain reaction. You know, I lit up their world, now they'll get to light up someone else's world. They'll have children and families of their own, you know, and it will just continue. So it doesn't stop. And even though I'm no longer in the classroom with those kids, when I do talk to them, and they're adults now, I still try to project that same influence on them that I had with them when I was giving them instruction in the classroom.
Awesome. Amazing answers from everyone. I want to take this time to thank all of you for being here. I really appreciate you coming here, giving your full time and attention to talking about Black history, which is important, I'm sure, to each and every one of us. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over. And I've seen the promised land.